Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and you know what to do, folks. Subscribe, like this stream if you're watching live, youtube.com/ESVN show. You can put on push notifications so you know when we're going live. And in the non-NFL season, we are live at 4 p.m. Eastern on Mondays. We also, and during the NFL season, do an extra show on Thursdays. Rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening to or watching this. Hello, Bradley Alsop.
Hello.
Hi. So, obviously, elephant in the room is that the Knicks lost pretty badly at home in Game 7.
I don't see why that would be relevant to me. I am a Timberwolves fan.
Totally.
I've always been a Timberwolves fan.
Always been.
As a native,
Ant-Man,
as a
new
native
MJ.
Minnesotan, I have always been, as a native of the Twin Cities, have always supported my Timberwolves. Rah, rah.
I mean, I'm basically okay with anyone in the West winning at this point. I mean, oh, you're about to knock something over. You caught it really, really at the edge.
That pesky little thing.
No, I mean, look, I think it's a blessing in disguise for the Knicks. I guess we'll just get right into the NBA and the Eastern Conference Finals, and we'll wax poetically about what the Timberwolves are doing in the second. But yeah, I mean, the Knicks just couldn't make this work from a health perspective. And I know it's Tibbs, it's same old Tibbs, but it's hard for me to hate on the job that he's done this season as the head coach of the New York Knicks. And I think the extension that he received mid-series was warranted, or the raise that he got, basically. Because this team plays hard for him. They appreciate him. They love him. He embodies kind of like the spirit of tough, gritty basketball and defensive responsibility first. I mean, Dante DiVincenzo is not a talented defensive player, but you have even him playing hard, even if he can't guard guys in the way that other players might be able to. But the reality of the situation is when Jalen Brunson fractured his hand, what are we looking at here? I mean, the Knicks didn't have any player from their starting 5 from the regular season, which included Julius Randle out for the rest of the season with shoulder surgery. OG Anunoby, who tried to come back into the game at the start of the game and was just not himself so visibly that Thibodeau just took him out after the first quarter and he didn't return. And that was probably a blessing because he couldn't defend, which is he's one of the best defenders in the NBA, in my opinion. And then that's part of when the Pacers went on this incredible roll, and their ability to move the ball and score off of that is just phenomenal. And that is the only way they have a chance in this next series. But then, so you had Randall out for the entire playoffs. Mitchell Robinson was the starter in the season, and then Hartenstein took over and, played incredibly well. But Mitchell Robinson got injured again in the playoffs. Jalen Brunson fractured his hand in that game. OG Anunoby was unavailable. It's just like, what are the Knicks supposed to do at a certain point? They just can't. They were too injured, and they would have gotten stomped even if Jalen Brunson didn't fracture his hand in the series against the Celtics. And so I think the Knicks can look towards the future with a lot of hope, even though seeing the record for not making the Eastern Conference Finals, I think, is still held by the Knicks. They're either first or second.
It would probably be them and the Kings, honestly.
But that's West.
In the Eastern Conference, yes, it would be the Knicks.
I think it is the Knicks. Yeah, in 2000, and then after that, it's the 76ers, who haven't made it since 2001. So that stat is incredibly depressing, but it's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, and especially it would have been a particularly Pyrrhic victory in my view if if the Knicks had won this Game 7 and then had to go into playing the Borg, Voltron, Boston Celtics without Jalen Brunson. I think it would have been a pretty economical 4-game sweep.
Right.
I really would have no confidence in them to being able to summon all their strength for a victory against the Celtics team without their engine, which is Jalen Brunson, but. The injury stuff, I think, is I understand that other fan bases or other teams don't want to use that as an excuse, and I don't actually minimize I actually will try not to minimize the Pacers' victory, only because I think some people online have been saying they beat the mostly Giannis-less and Lillard-less Bucks, and then this very injured Knicks team. At the same time, you can only play who's in front of you, and I think there have been real signs of extremely impressive play regardless by this Pacers team. I mean, this Game 7 was literally, they had one of the most historic offensive outputs in the first half of a Game 7 ever in NBA history. They had at one point had a 185.7 net rating or something in offensive rating in the game.
They were shooting over 70% for like a majority of the game,
right,
if I'm not mistaken.
The 185.7, I think it ultimately bottomed out to 69 point something at the end of the game, but like literally those net ratings rival like a Game 7 from the Tim Duncan 2013-14 Spurs, aka like one of the most like ruthlessly efficient offenses in the last like 20-25 years. So like any way you slice it, no matter who you're playing, that's an extremely impressive offensive performance, and they got everything that they needed out of the guys that they needed to get it from. So I tip my hat to them in that way.
Yeah, I mean, you start to hate the teams that you're playing in the series. Like, I mean, Tyrese Halliburton loves to talk shit, but only when he's up by 20. So that's not my he's not my favorite player.
No,
I kind of respected him, but now I think he's a soft little baby. Although he's a talented player, I get it. But the other Pacers I have, like Pascal Siakam, I love.
Siakam was really finding his stroke, and really importantly, they could not punish him beyond the 3-point line.
Yep.
What was so crucial
when OG went out.
Right. What is so crucial, especially in this game, is he was hitting shots from beyond the 3-point line, which he is probably one of their least effective 3-point shooters. And then on the other aspects of the game, Halliburton basically was firing off threes at will. Importantly, Miles Turner was getting his both around the rim and beyond the arc, which is what makes him such a talented offensive player. That you have a 7-footer who is capable of hitting threes like that. And T.J. McConnell, even though he's undersized and a little bit less athletic than some of these guys on the Knicks,
plays his heart out. I respect him.
He plays really hard, and he's actually quite crafty off the dribble. Like he did a lot of impressive drives and was getting shots over the Knicks defenders, like,
and a frustrating defender,
right?
As well.
And to their also great credit, which also obviously the Sixers did as well with Kelly Oubre, was picking up Brunson basically from full court, leading to trying kind of trying their absolute hardest to stifle him and not let Brunson get in rhythm, was particularly effective, especially when Aaron Nesmith was the primary defender, who also, credit to him, Nesmith had a great game on both ends of the floor, guarding Brunson and shooting incredibly well. He had a great night on the floor as well, offensively. So I really want to give them credit, because I don't want to gripe too much and not be too sore about this. But at the same time, it was hard for me to expect too much when 5 or 6 kind of top-level starters to borderline rotation players like Josh Hart were either banged up or fully unavailable.
I mean, they were about to go up 3-0 in that game that OG went out with the hamstring issue, and it was like a miracle shot at the end of the game where they mismanaged things. So this could have been an entirely different situation.
Which, looking back now, especially with that very long Andrew Nembhard 3-pointer leading to them losing Game 3, is absolutely, both because of the OG injury, but also that shot, that kind of, to me, looking back, is sort of the linchpin in this series, that they were up 2-0, lose that game even though it was quite close, and then the rest were not particularly close.
Right.
So not being able to gut out that Game 3, I think, was extremely crucial. However, the other things just sort of looking into the offseason for the Knicks is that the injuries are one thing. There still were a few moments where I was like, I think because of the fatigue, because of the injury, because of injuries, because of the attrition, there were moments where I was like, this is where that's really coming back to bite, because certain mistakes were made as a result. So, for example, when they in the third quarter, when they sort of came back roaring and the defense sort of was coming into focus a little bit more, they were able to cut it to 6, but literally from Deuce McBride not firing away right in the corner when he got a shot, trying to drive and pass it out, leading to a turnover, leading to a score on the other end for the Pacers, to a consecutive Jalen Brunson turnover, leading to another score by the Pacers. It literally went from 6 to 12 in like 30 seconds.
Oh yeah.
And then towards the end, even when they were trying to even get within 13 or 10, they fumbled they got an 8-second violation in not being able to get the inbounds pass off. The Pacers score. Then the next inbound, I think, or either the first or second inbound after that, they turn the ball over, another layup for the Pacers. Like, when they were already this depleted and already down this much at the half, any mistake like that is literally it's any number of them. Obviously, it's not just one, but those are death knells. Like, you cannot.
And Josh Hart, we were saying this before the show.
He couldn't shoot.
He couldn't shoot because his abdominal strain was so, like, he couldn't basically follow through when he was trying to, like, hit a floater or hit a jump shot or anything like that. So, I mean,
like, Hart, I think, and also, as you were saying, Emma, like, we were seeing the effects of the abdominal injury, I think, because, like, Hart's stroke from 3 could not hit any further than the front rim. Some of his layups were, like, you could tell it was really straining him to, like, exhibit explosive movement.
Yeah,
and that's just not what you expect from what we've expected from Josh Hart.
Right. I saw this great tweet by Benji Sarlin, who I guess works at Semaphore.
It's big Knicks fan, Benji.
Yes,
yeah.
Well, he has a great tweet here. Knicks have a lot of work to do this summer. Need to fill an all-NBA scorer to take the pressure off Brunson, an elite wing defender who can shoot, an S-tier rebounding big to split time minutes with Hartenstein, and a veteran bench scorer. The point being is that they've done all of those things, but those guys are injured, like the veteran bench scorer, Bogdanovich, who is still under contract, if I'm not misremembering.
And despite being a little bit older, all they really would like him to do is stretch the floor. You know, honestly, just like be out there to get into a corner and make 3-pointers.
Right. I mean, and that's just basically saying, if the Knicks can be a little bit smarter, and I know that's a big if with Thibodeau, but I think the takes are reductive. Like, you heard Rick Carlisle after this saying he's the best coach in the league. Tibbs is respected. Tibbs is really respected, and I know he needs to be smarter in the regular season. But part of the reason those minutes were so insane, and Josh Hart was playing literally all of the games all of the time, is because of the situation that they were put in from other injuries that Josh Hart ideally isn't even starting on this kind of team. Like, Dante DiVincenzo, ideally, in my view, like, if the Knicks are going to make a move, Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, if he wants to
reunite with his buddies,
wants to play the 2 instead of the 3, right? And Brandon Ingram,
some number of those, like, rangy wings, 2-way wings, I think would be really,
it could really
for the Knicks. Honestly,
it could really change them. So. I don't think the Knicks are far, and I know that sounds crazy, but I know Jalen Brunson, and he, like Anthony Edwards, has that dog in him. Like, he is not a soft guy. He's going to come back, he's going to work harder, and he's going to make sure that the Knicks are in a good position next year.
My one slight quibble with Tibbs overall, that I was talking to my friends is that especially seeing that basically the freshest legs on that court, the guy who probably had the most offensive juice in that game, was 32-year-old Alec Burks on his second go-round with the Knicks. In my view, I just think seeing how Burks was playing, where he was able to knock down open shots, he was able to get into the lane and draw fouls, I think there's a universe where Tibbs could have certainly given guys like DiVincenzo and Hart a little bit more time on the bench and let Burks play, because Burks was not a net negative. Precious Achiuwa honestly was probably called on a little bit more than Alec Burks was, and I think Precious struggled more than Burks would have with more extended minutes.
Right. So in terms of caps, I know we're only talking about the Knicks. I'm sorry to our friend Will from Indiana, but I mean they beat the Pacers beat the Bucks without Giannis, and then eventually without Dame, and then but they played well.
Honestly, I was impressed. I was impressed with the defensive game plan against the Knicks. I think that as annoying potentially as aesthetically as Tyrese Halliburton is, you have to respect that guy's 3-point shot, and he truly is a really quite creative passer.
Oh, yes.
He extends plays just by virtue of being able to just, like, contort his arm to find almost like junk passes out to the perimeter or to the guys cutting into the paint. And everyone else did their job. And Nembhard, Nesmith, Miles Turner, they literally they had the exact right offensive composition to quicken the game and both match the Knicks when they needed to, but also kind of run them off the court a little bit when they needed to, and especially they did this in Game 7.
That the Knicks injuries like really did allow their offense to take over. The question for the Pacers against the Celtics is, can they hold up defensively? Because they are not a good defensive team.
And the Celtics offense is this, the way the starting lineup, especially if Porzingis can play, is just constructed such that basically any of the starting five can guard any of anybody else's starting five.
Yeah, I mean, they have perimeter defenders that they can put on Halliburton, and if they slow him down,
big guys.
Oh,
like,
I mean,
like Kristaps Porzingis can feasibly defend.
Well, yeah,
I mean, he's probably the weakest link, but I'm saying like Tatum, who's 6'8", 6'8".
Holiday, they could stick on 100%.
Halliburton. Drew Holiday can get on.
I mean, I know that maybe like no one's arms are going to be as long as Halliburton in that situation, but Holiday can be a pest regardless.
And the strength, like the density that Drew has, is I think enough to make things uncomfortable. For
and
Halliburton.
They can switch off and on. I mean, Derek
They can
White,
switch basically anybody too, which is the more difficult. So I think honestly,
the Pacers are lucky to get one. I'm going to be real here. The Pacers are lucky to get one.
It's just this is a tough matchup. I know they did beat them in the in-season tournament, but I just think that was also earlier in the season where I sort of feel like the Celtics have almost even further solidified what has very much worked for them, and also. The Pacers are coming off this 7-game series. The Celtics have had a lot of time to rest since they beat the Cavs.
Oh, I mean, it's been since May 15th, May 16th since they last played a game. Right. So they've already had 5 days rest.
They've defeated the Cavs, and also this is going to be game 1 at home too tomorrow. Like,
yeah,
it's
they showed like they can be complacent. That's the one thing, is that the Celtics have shown that they can kind of rest on their laurels, but that's just because they know they can turn it on when they need to. I have my doubts about them winning a series against the Timberwolves, but we can get to that in a second.
I think it's a good point that we were talking about, where it's like I think sometimes the Celtics almost fumble the late game. They are very confident, very, very kind of strident going into it, and sort of can fumble the late game, kind of, the late game strategy a little bit. And as I was saying, I still feel as if there's sometimes is a little bit of a disinclination to stray from the 5-out 3-point shooting model, when sometimes I'm like, Jason Tatum is big enough and strong enough to just drive into the paint, draw fouls, or get layups. Maybe they can, but honestly, at the same time, I'm saying this only if something breaks down. If they're shooting 45% or higher from 3, it's hard to beat them. Factually, that just in terms of the amount of scoring they can.
And I don't have any faith that the Pacers are going to be able to defend that. I mean, they struggled with freaking Dante DiVincenzo from 3 at certain points in the series. So my point is just that. We'll see.
It could be there could be just some signs of overwhelming them.
And they may not even play Porzingis because calf injuries are, it's like a hamstring. We saw what happened when they rushed OG Anunoby back too quickly. But anyway, RIP Knicks, better hope for next year.
It was a fun season though. Really, we had a good time.
Made me fall in love with basketball again to a degree. I mean, like I have always it's so much easier, and I feel this way about hockey. Like when the Rangers are good, when the Knicks are good, I am much more engaged.
We also just
football. I'm engaged no matter what. Although this year I was like, oh my god, the Israel's committing genocide, so it's a little bit difficult to pay attention.
But the thing with this Knicks team, for me at least, just as a fan, is like, we haven't really had like a franchise savior sort of like figure like Jalen Brunson for a very long time. And to get a trade deadline acquisition that seemed to be so perfect and so in line with what the team needed in OG Anunoby, like some sort of competent or at least like patient and measured team building that has led to actually on-court results, but also just like feeling proud of your team or feeling like your team fought hard. Like, we haven't had that in a long time. Yeah. So to possess that, and also to be going into the offseason knowing that a healthier team will be more exciting, and knowing that we still possess our full complement of draft picks, it's a better outlook than even last year or the year before.
It absolutely is. We'll see how there's a player option for Anunoby. We'll see if he's gonna, try to get an extension, or he'll just play that out and then head into free agency. So the other amazing, the big story really of last night is just how the Timberwolves came back.
This is I don't know how it. I'm still having trouble sort of like verbalizing how like monumental this victory is.
I mean, this is the first conference finals for the Timberwolves in 20 years. They've never made it to the NBA championship.
Right.
And I think they match up pretty damn good with the Mavericks.
Yes, no, agreed.
But like the sequence at the 4 minutes left, I'm at the edge on the edge of my seat. Cat couldn't play. He had 5 fouls, so he was, or was it? No. Was it Ruby? It was Gobert.
Cat was out for some time, and Naz Reid was in for him.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
And then they ended up having to bring him back out because Gobert fouled out.
Exactly.
Right. So Cat was out, so Naz Reid was in for him, and in the final minutes, Anthony Edwards misses a shot. Naz Reid dunks it in.
I think it was Cat. I think it was Cat who did the putback.
No, that was later.
Oh, sorry. It was later.
Yeah, but like this is when I'm like 4 minutes in. That was like to close out.
Oh, yes. Okay, that was like the dagger.
Yes,
sort of,
4 minutes in. And then this sequence of so Naz Reid dunks it in. They're bringing up the ball up the floor. Jamal Murray turns it over.
Right, yes.
To Mike Conley, who, I mean, just a grinder. I like
the consummate
such a professional.
Yeah, the consummate professional in the NBA is Mike Conley.
I know. It's just that's what will be on his gravestone.
Totally.
Not to be morbid. Mike, consummate professional Conley.
Absolutely. Just sort of like no matter what, anywhere in his career, you want that guy on your team.
Yeah. So Mike Conley steals it, gets it to Reid, throws it to Ant, makes the open 3, and it's a 10-point game. And I'm like, holy
after being
shit.
down after being down 20 at the half.
I like
they went on a 54-24 run.
So if
54-24
or 52-24
or 52 something like that.
Something like that.
Just like almost like a 30-point
I had
swing.
52-24 written down, but I could have written that down wrong in my excitement.
But even like a near 30-point turnaround.
Yes. It was, I think, I also have written down they outscored the Nuggets 60-37 in the second half.
Like, that is crazy.
And Rudy Gobert was a different guy in the second half. Like, did you see that step back?
When he made
that fadeaway?
There's a chance that was potentially almost like the inflection point of
holy crap.
Rudy making this like. Because I think sometimes because again this is almost like also symptomatic of like the aesthetics of a player too is like I think there's a lot of like we have a lot of thoughts, preconceived notions of Rudy Gobert, which I think are mostly fair. He's kind of a baby. He's kind of like.
I think I would hate him if he were to be someone in my personal life.
He comes across as a little childish. He comes across as a little soft. There was the whole thing with him touching the microphones and in pre-COVID supposedly getting Donovan Mitchell sick. Like there's a lot about him in that regard. But I think sometimes we forget that like the reason he has won multiple Defensive Players of the Year. The reason that this trade has worked because the Timberwolves have gone farther than they've gone in literally 2 decades, in no small part to him, is because he's an incredible athlete.
Yeah,
and he has incredible stamina.
Yep.
Like the reason that it was so hysterical for him to make that shot is just like because randomly Rudy Gobert could do that.
I know.
Like randomly out of nowhere, Rudy Gobert could, with the shot clock running down, make a off 1 foot turnaround fadeaway jumper. And then also play essentially the entire game in a really physical Game 7 on the road against the literal reigning 3-time MVP.
They have shown the ability, and this is why they're so exciting and like a real threat to win the title, is the ability to be a lockdown defensive team when they decide to. You know, you had Anthony Edwards after the game, post-game, talking about how I locked down Jamal. I mean, maybe I'm just like, used to an NBA that is a little bit more respectful of their opponents than, say, like when Tyreek Hill is like, I burned you or whatever. Anthony Edwards just feels like a trash talker that almost in the NFL as opposed to the NBA to the camera. Like he is braggadocious in the way that like Deion Sanders was. And I know Michael Jordan was like that too, but it's just I think there's more modern examples of NFL players being like this, like completely in your face trash talkers than there are NBA guys who are more, I guess, cerebral and students of the game, and it's like a more elegance. Ant is just a freaking ball of energy, incredible athlete, like in your face, total dog. I mean, he is the man.
He was yelling like specifically at this like 70-year-old Nuggets fan, like old white man. saying, "Where are you at? Where are you at?"
I just love it.
Like,
Can we get that press conference I sent in Slack? Yeah. I mean, this is going viral, obviously, for these reasons, for the reasons you'll hear in a second. But this is Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards speaking at the press conference after their Game 7 victory. And it's just a funny exchange with the reporter here.
This is for either one of you guys. And usually in NBA history, it says you have to lose and lose big before you win. What is it about this team that says
we lost last year?
Yeah, but that's different. You have to lose at a bigger stage. Usually, teams usually.
It's the playoffs. We lost last year.
We lost the last 2 years. Shit.
God damn. How much more we got to lose?
Yeah, how much you want us to lose?
Been losing for 20 years.
I mean, that's just the truth, dog.
God damn.
What makes this is for either one.
That's so good. That's so good. Goddamn. Yeah.
It only, like, I think in my view further like emphasizes the other like reputational thing. It's like Cat's kind of just like a large child.
Oh, totally.
Like,
but a large child, and if Rudy Gobert is a large petulant child, Cat is a large fun.
yeah, he's just like he's just kind of like he's like a goofy kid.
Yeah, right. And so talk about like when winning cures all. I mean, Cat's reputation has got to be taking a massive leap based on this performance.
There are a number. I mean, in terms of this team, and not only this team, but also the validation of multiple moves that many in the NBA world have or did consider to be kind of like somewhat of a failure. And by that I mean even the Cat selection at first overall, maybe not necessarily paying dividends, meaning that in the sense that there was a lot of, I think, discussion as to whether he really is a number one option for a team. That kind of gets obviated when the team chemistry and the team structure is extremely beneficial to what Cat is actually good at,
right.
Which I think was not sometimes being emphasized both in the roster construction, but both also how he was being utilized in other seasons. And then the same thing with the Jazz Wolves trade that got Rudy Gobert where he is. We were talking about I mean the broader NBA, discourse was discussing, oh my God, like the Jazz won this trade. Look how great Walker Kessler is playing.
Right.
It's like the Jazz literally won like 38 games this season or whatever the case may be. And I'm not even trying to dog the Jazz in that way. I like what they got with the trade, but they were being seen as like the clear winners.
Yeah.
Like that this was a calamitous trade potentially for the Wolves with how it was playing out. And now they're Rudy Gobert, fresh off another Defensive Player of the Year award, winning performance in the regular season, alongside Karl Anthony Towns, and now the other first overall pick, the clear star, the clear
new face of the NBA,
clear new face of the NBA kind of guy, like literally almost single-handedly, and I say almost because of Towns and Gobert's presence as well, rehabilitating and rejuvenating and reigniting.
Oh yeah,
what was once a moribund NBA franchise.
Oh, good word.
Yeah, thank you. A laughing stock. David Kahn, the Johnny Flynn pick over Steph Curry. In the 2008 or 2009 draft. Like, this team was a joke.
You know what I also think is helping, and you see this with NFL players too, is these guys that they're getting paid so much, like, they live somewhere else in the offseason. They'll live in Miami. They'll live in LA.
Right.
They'll live maybe where they grew up in, like, Ant's from Georgia.
Right.
I don't know where he lives. But the point is just, like, I think the private jetification of these players, it allows for, like, guys aren't just leaving to be a part of the Lakers, leaving to be a part of the Knicks, to be a part of the Heat, somewhere where they want to be. I just love how Anthony Edwards is embracing being a part of Minnesota. I mean, even you see it with Giannis staying in Milwaukee. Like, I want to be this guy in this franchise, and I can go to my house in Greece in the offseason or whatever.
And I think it's a testament to what you're saying. I was thinking similarly with Giannis in Milwaukee and now in Minnesota in the Twin Cities. It's like them having some sort of staying power already in those cities within those franchises. As much as NBA free agency or even the draft, of course, I think some people have preferences for their own lives in terms of where they would live, obviously. Yeah. But someone like Anthony Edwards, that's a guy with gravitational pull.
Yeah.
That is a guy who people will come to this team to play with him.
And this is not, I mean, Minnesota, if I were not to live in New York
and
or
it's
not
nothing
on the
against,
East Coast, I would want to live in Minnesota. It sounds incredible, and I love all their democratic and progressivism. But it's about, I mean, a lot of the guys just want to be in warm weather.
Right. It's nothing against Minneapolis or Milwaukee in any way. I more mean in the sense of like, guys, as you said, they gravitate to the coast. They gravitate to Miami for the sun, the nightlife, and sometimes even tax purposes. Honestly, for somebody,
100%.
Sometimes I think a lot of players almost like to play in Texas for that very reason, with a much lower income tax than that of New York, for example.
That's a sell that they literally that the Florida teams give to guys who won't pay income tax.
Right. So I think there's also those considerations, but I think it's so important for a team that definitely does have a smaller market share just by virtue of where they are, to have guys there who are not only stars in their own right, but will attract other players who want to play there.
100%. So, I mean, what's your take, I guess, on the Dallas-Minnesota matchup in the conference finals for the West? I feel like, I mean, gotta say, I was wrong about how Kyrie Irving would pan out in Dallas. I mean, it turns out they seem to be best buddies. And Kyrie Irving, I have such a complicated relationship with like my feelings about him.
I think there's a number of basketball fans who feel similarly.
There's so much I love about him. Like, there's so much. His black radical, kind of posture and activism is so awesome to behold. The fact that he's connected to his Native American ancestry through the Standing Rock tribe, what he chooses to speak out on in terms of social justice, his commitment to his religion and to being a Muslim and fasting, and just some of that, like, it's beautiful in many ways, his spirituality. But then he also shares like anti-Semitic conspiracy theories.
Right, and then also I think some of those strengths almost get pushed to like the other side of the horseshoe, where he's like, I'm essentially big braining myself into like further, cosmic / spiritual rejuvenation, to the point where I know more things than actually anyone on planet Earth.
Yep.
Which may be flat.
Well, I will say, this is a bit of an aside. I have my fiance has a friend who, I won't say what job he's in, but it makes money doing a competitive thing, and it's like a solo competition, a lot of money. He fell into or became really good as a professional competitor, and he's kind of like become a conspiracy theorist, an anti-vaxxer. And it's like, I see this with Aaron Rodgers or Kyrie Irving, these guys who are so talented. They can develop a libertarian mindset where they don't have any communitarian ideology sometimes. And it's all about, but I don't want to loop Kyrie into that. Like Aaron Rodgers, I feel like is that way, because he still has that idea, but it's more, I don't know why I'm talking about this. You know what I'm saying?
I think what you're saying though is basically the fact that I sometimes listen, not to get too conceptual here, but one of the reasons why Ayn Rand's ideology is literally based off certain people literally possessing more skills and more power than others is purely to be like, we actually should essentially stratify people based on how extraordinary they are, which is completely antithetical to like anything communitarian.
Right.
So I think there's part of it where it's like, I have such unbelievable physical talent that somebody's can also transfer to being like, I'm also a genius.
Right.
And therefore, I actually am smarter than you, and you even questioning me leads me to be adversarial towards you.
Yes.
Which is what happens with Rodgers in the press and Kyrie in the press.
Totally Kyrie in the press, but I will say, at least, unlike Aaron Rodgers, he's not talking to Tucker Carlson. He still has a complete understanding of racial justice and systemic inequities as it relates
That's
to
what almost makes
people.
it more puzzling with Kyrie, is that there are some times where I'm like, I feel like he is understanding structural inequality, and yet in some other capacities he is very willing, just by virtue of kind of like the free speech angle, being like, why am I not allowed to say something that is like incredibly offensive and ahistorical?
And I want to root for you, Kyrie, because my claim to fame here, I went to parties with him when I was in high school, because he's from New Jersey. I met him one time. I got to play beer pong with him. No big deal. So come on, whatever. Long story short, I don't know how we got down this rabbit hole.
But basically, all that is to say is I think there was a number of reasons.
Good beer pong player, obviously.
I think there was a number of reasons. I think to sort of tie it back is I think there were a number of reasons we sort of were like, we could potentially think on the court and off the court, this could be a troubling pairing between Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, two guys who I think a lot of time do require the ball in isolating circumstances.
That's what I
to
thought.
Produce.
That's why we were skeptical.
Right, and I think the ability of the Jason Kidd and the coaching staff, but also these players, especially buttressed by some very effective trade deadline acquisitions in PJ Washington and PJ Washington, who is shooting historically better than he ever has in
Another
any
thing we were
regular
wrong
season.
about. I mean,
Daniel Gafford being a pretty ideal pick and roll partner for Luka Doncic is that they've been really, really expertly, I think, utilizing both Kyrie and Luka off the ball so that there isn't as much clogging of spacing because of any of isolations. And also, the ISO plays were honestly, as sometimes kind of grinding and plodding as it might be seen, and as sometimes there might be some clamoring for the Mavs to play with more speed. I think they have been more than usual, but the ISOs are what killed the Thunder.
Yeah.
The Doncic Kyrie game of basically getting an advantageous one-on-one matchup and then winning the rebounding battle, because that's kind of what the Mavs had a little bit of an advantage, I would say, in size and strength over OKC. That's what won them the games. Like, they couldn't defend Luka one-on-one. They couldn't defend Kyrie one-on-one.
Even with Luka being a little bit hampered at this point. Although
and kind of struggling like in a number of ways physically.
He might be getting a little bit healthier. At like that Game 6 win for them at home is probably huge. So they didn't have to go on the road with the Thunder for Game 7. So
but all that is to say is about the next matchup, in my view, is that I just think that the Wolves, in terms of their length and the way that they play defense, it's a tough game in, game out matchup, I think, for those two stars in particular, in Luka and Kyrie, because they're going to have to get quite inventive, because if Kyrie has a defensive assignment like Jaden McDaniels for a few rounds, that's going to be tough. That's a guy who has like a 7-foot wingspan guarding you like he's 6 feet tall. And he's literally built like a Star Wars character, like an alien. Like he has like, I mean, when he's on the court, it's like he can almost encompass the entire length of the floor.
You're right.
And so
talk about rangy.
And if you get around him and you have Rudy Gobert looming in the paint, that's another guy with like a enormous wingspan, ready to suck you up or make your shots go from easy lay-ins to bad shots.
It sounds, simple, but I do think that Gobert's size and defensive capabilities are going to be key to this series. Is he going to be able to be dominant, or will he kind of drift in and out as he sometimes tends to do?
If he's dominant, it's going to be over relatively quickly, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if they're able to neutralize one of or both of Kat and Gobert and how they attack the offense, and if there are some real heater games from Luka and Kyrie, which against any opponent is distinctly possible, I think it could be close, but I still give the Wolves the edge.
Snarka Norsky says Dallas doesn't have a big man who can drag Gobert out to the perimeter like Jokic did. I think that's a great point, and it solidifies a lot of what we're saying here as well.
Like you're not going necessarily to Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford to shoot threes or even mid ranges. Like there are guys to pick and roll with Luka.
Right, absolutely. Angela from Alberta says, NHL talk. This has been a tough second round for Oilers fans, but we are hopeful for tonight. I think both of the Oilers and Vancouver can beat Dallas, but it's going to be tough coming off a 7-game round. I'm cheering for your team for the ECF. Thank you, Angela. It's a good transition to the NHL here, which I thought we might be able to come on here and preview both the Eastern Conference Finals and the Western Conference Finals for both the NHL and NBA.
Not so,
because the Oilers took care of business in Game 6, and they won handily. That was the only game in this series that was not decided by one score, where they blew out Vancouver 5-1. And they did it 5v5, which has been a real struggle for the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the big story coming out of yesterday was that Brock Boeser is out for the rest of the playoffs with a blood clotting issue, which is, by the way, something that's kind of you've seen this before in the NBA. I mean, in the NHL. I'm not exactly sure what the reasoning is behind it, but like he has a blood clot in his leg. He's not going to be able to play for the rest of the playoffs. Obviously, it's a really scary situation. So Canucks Oilers tonight, game 7. And I don't know, like, the thing about the Oilers is that they have way more to lose than the Canucks. The Canucks are here, they're happy to be here, but they're also at home. So they have a looseness that they can play with that the Oilers can't. Now, the Oilers have more talent, obviously, with Draisaitl, with Nugent-Hopkins, with Connor McDavid. I mean, they with Nurse, like, they have more high-end talent, I would say. But the Canucks have been playing great team hockey all postseason. And, you know, I got to give credit to Rick Tocchet, who has had these guys playing really sound hockey the entire time. It's hard for me to say how this goes, but given the Oilers' history, I'm just going to say something happens in the Canucks advance. I mean, it's just like I have no hockey analysis of this, especially because just by definition, I struggle a little bit more to analyze Western teams because I'm sleeping for the most part. But you know, without Boeser, I think people are going to take the Canucks for granted. But they have the ability to make scoring plays with some of their other, you know.
Yeah, you still got JT Miller, you still got Pedersen. Like,
you do.
There's still
got Quinn Hughes.
Right,
who
you still got Quinn Hughes. Yeah,
he's
100%.
playing through something, but he can set up plays as a defenseman.
Absolutely,
as best as anybody. So, I am really disappointed to see though Boeser out. He's their leading goal scorer this entire playoffs.
Yeah.
It really is just such a shame, and
he's been playing so well. He's been awesome.
He's single-handedly driven them to like victories time and time again. Now,
similar vibe almost in an NHL capacity of like, look at what a few great players can do for a struggling organization.
Right.
Like,
right.
Catapult them into like relevance and competitiveness, and now they're on the doorstep of potentially, you know, beating Connor McDavid in a rock fight series, going 7 games to play Dallas. But, you know, I think there's big stakes for both, whereas I think a little bit more Canucks are playing with house money just because they're so young and there's so much more. But I think it would be a huge statement to send home Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, especially without Brock Boeser. But also, I think we will have a lot of existential questions to answer if ultimately the Oilers lose again in the second round of the playoffs.
Right, absolutely. And Demko, who has been playing really well, I guess he's not playing in Game 7. He was injured after Game 6.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not going to be the case. Like, they're not going to have the hot hand in net as it goes. But, like, you know, a lot of people, I think, are... Oh, shoot, I just lost my place in my notes here. The McDavid and this is what I meant to say. McDavid and the Oilers have had a lot of success in Edmonton, and that was when they had that blowout win and 5-1 win last time. Now, I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it in Vancouver.
On the road, yeah.
I'm taking Vancouver tonight. I don't know why. It's just a gut feel, but that's going to be my assessment of this evening. Now, we'll be able to analyze Dallas versus Edmonton or Vancouver when we get to that point. But Dallas is I think the favorite in either situation. They just like completely dismantled the Avalanche, who had, you know, some drama, like basic Nichushkin. God, I can never say it. Nichushkin, Valer Nichushkin. Man, he can't get his life together. He failed a drug test after, you know, basically it seems like it's a snow addiction, if you will, or something, an issue with that kind of situation, after he was found with a sex worker passed out from alcohol poisoning in his hotel room when they had a road game. He was basically suspended for a little bit of time. He came back and was reinstated and was playing really well, but now he's in stage 3 of the player assistance program because he violated the terms and he tested positive for a controlled substance. And I can see how that basically threw the entire team into a tizzy. There were some comments made by players on the team. Maybe it was Cale Makar or somebody else, I forget, just basically saying he made his choices. So really rough. And
he was so pivotal to them winning the Stanley Cup a few years ago. Like, he was like one of outside of Makar and McKinnon, like one of the most integral parts of that playoff run.
And he just signed a pretty long extension. He's thrown. I mean, it's just addiction is really, really difficult.
Yeah, it's
so
terrible.
I'm just hoping that he gets better. But it seems like that really took a lot out of the Avalanche, and so the Stars have made it to the Western Conference Finals for the second year in a row. And the Stars have to be feeling incredibly confident about who they've beaten. They've beaten the last two Stanley Cup champions. The Avalanche won it in 2022 season, and the Golden Knights won it in 2023. And they came back from down against the Golden Knights, so they're battle tested, and they just have incredible depth. All of these options for scoring, all these options to move guys up and around the lineup, and then Ottinger can play with the best of them and is a top 5 goalie in the league. So they scared the bejesus out of me. There's a magic to the Canucks. The Oilers have the top end talent, obviously, but they are just still, even though Stuart Skinner played well last game, do I have any faith that it will continue?
Seems very touch and go always with our guy Stuart Skinner, but we'll see. I totally agree with you though. I love how these Stars have been playing. I'm very, very impressed. Awesome, difficult road to get to where they are. But as you said, Miro Heiskanen, Rupe Hintz, Rupe.
Don't ask me.
I think that's his name, Rupe Hintz or Mintz.
It's hard because I see these names written and then I get confused in my mind.
Wyatt Johnston has been playing so incredibly well for them. Even still having old head Joe Pavelski to kind of have a moderating, stabilizing influence for them. And as you said, Ottinger, who like on any given night can truly be like literally the best goalie in the league. Like he can really just. He's almost a guy where it's like that's a guy who can actually somewhat in the way that a goalie can take over a game.
And Jason Robertson too.
Yes, one of my faves, one of the most fun goal scorers to watch in Robertson too.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think it'll be a good matchup no matter any way you slice it. If it's the Canucks or the Oilers, but I think I give the Stars the edge also.
Yeah. We mentioned Miro Heiskanen too, right?
Yeah.
He's
Miro,
been phenomenal. So, they're a really talented team. We shall see. And then, of course, my Rangers closed it out with a hat trick by Chris Kreider. I am on the train down to my sister's law school graduation. Can't get the game to load on my computer, so I am just like watching the ESPN Gamecast.
One of the most tortured ways to follow a game.
Staring at my screen as it just like scroll updates every 10 seconds. Oh, hit by Jacob Trouba. And then, the Rangers are down 3-1 in the period. I'm also checking Twitter on my phone, and I have like a list of Rangers bloggers and writers and stuff. They're saying they look like crap. They look like shit. Oh my God, here we go. Game 7 at the Garden. They're gonna choke this.
Another one.
I mean, I was beside myself. So I'm watching this. We're pulling into the station. I see Chris Kreider ties it or goes 3-2 in the third period. Then I see that they draw a penalty. It's 3-3. We're pulling into frickin' Union Station, and I'm like, they tied it, right? Like they tied it. Waiting
ma'am,
for
you need to get off the train.
a cab, and it's 4-3, and I'm on my phone like freaking out. I can't believe I didn't get to witness this incredible performance. And of course, everyone's making these parallels to '94 because Marc Messier against the Devils. I think that was the Eastern Conference Finals a little bit, and it was a Game 7, so different circumstances. But went into it and said, guaranteed, we will win. Then Messier scored a hat trick. Chris Kreider allegedly going into the third period said, I'm getting one to the rest of the team, and he got 3. So the longest tenured Ranger puts the team on his back. And I'll never forget when Chris Kreider came into the playoffs coming off of his BC season, and he joined the team midway through towards the end of the year after that, and was just a freaking spark plug for the Rangers in the playoffs. He was so fast and big, and he's really evolved his game into being one of the best deflecting goal scorers of all time.
He's been awesome, as a testament to his staying power in this league. He's been awesome since I was watching him as a 16-year-old Devils fan in the conference finals of that year.
Yeah. He's a psycho.
12 years ago. Like,
And-
that's how long I've been like, wow, like Chris Kreider is fucking amazing.
And he is
Like,
just my kind of guy. You read about him, and he's learned Russian. He's learned, I forget the rest of the languages, but I know
Just to
because
sort of, like,
I've seen
communicate
him
with
speak.
his-
He learned multiple languages so he can speak with his teammates. He's a fantasy novel fan, and he plays the piano incredibly well.
We love this guy.
He's a freak savant, and he never takes credit. He's quintessential hockey guy, but not in a cringy way. He refuses to ever take credit for anything. And I just to see. I mean, I almost get like emotional to see how far he's come, and the fact that he's the longest tenured Ranger, and he was rumored to have turned down the captainship, and that's why I went to Trouba, who's been having a horrible postseason, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The fact
but
that
he did have a goal, right? Or is this, am I wrong?
He did. He had a and then
which I was almost like, oh,
but
Trouba
then the
got
Rangers
goal.
choked that game. Yeah, it was a shorthanded goal. He's been playing horribly defensively.
Yeah,
He's been on the ice for almost like every goal against. Anyway, the captainship should have gone to Kreider, but he allegedly turned it down because he didn't want to be the center of attention. It's just that's the kind of guy that he is.
But just an incredible win to be down 3-1.
And they were outplayed the whole game.
And then ultimately come out of there 5-3. Like, that is just, if that doesn't light a fire for your team, I don't know what will. That you guys were that the Rangers were down and out seemingly in an elimination game.
Yeah.
And it's either basically win or extend the series, and they were able to shut the door after being down to score 4 goals. And the way, as you were saying, the way they scored them, it's awesome, and it's like I just think a great way for them to advance and head into obviously a tough matchup.
Well, the Panthers scared the crap out of me. I mean, they are terrifying. I've said this all season. You've heard me. I'm a huge fan of the way that team is constructed. They are a forechecking team, but they also are the most penalized team in the NHL.
I was going to say they are nasty players.
And I worry a little bit for my Rangers' health, especially because Adam Fox is not himself.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Fox has been working through a knee injury throughout this playoffs. And that's part of what was an issue with them, the Rangers not being able to close out that series so quickly so he could rest up. But they're the most penalized team in the NHL during the regular season in total penalty minutes. And so if the Rangers want to have any success, they need to take advantage of that and score on the power play. The Panthers are almost the inverse of the Rangers. The Panthers are an incredible 5v5 team because they know how to forecheck like hell.
Right.
The Rangers aren't as good as
it's just
that.
like relentless, sort of,
right.
That type of like movement.
So if the Panthers can stay out of the penalty box, they'll win the series.
Right.
If the Rangers can score on the power play, good things will happen. And Sergei Bobrovsky is a very talented goaltender, but he's shown that he can be streaky. So can the Rangers take advantage of that?
I think what's always been apparent with Bob is that even earlier in his career is that he's one of those guys where it's like somehow some way there are nights where I'm like, he's either the best goalie in the league or he's the worst goalie in the league.
It's exactly right.
Like he sometimes makes plays. I'm like, oh, like only he on the planet can do that.
Yeah.
But then I'm also like, oh, then he gives up like 5 goals and has to be taken out. You're
Right.
Like, how is it the same guy?
He can be up. I mean, Shesterkin can be like that too, but Shesterkin is just like an athletic. He's in his athletic prime at this current moment, and also has this psychotic.
I was gonna say he's more of
mentality.
like he has more of that like I possess no emotion. Only,
Yes. And funnily enough, best friends are Temi Panarin, Sergei Bobrovsky. Will they have some sort of friendly competition between the two of them?
I didn't realize that. That's crazy.
BFFs, yeah. Look up videos of them dancing. It's pretty funny.
I love
that. The regular season was not really close in my view. The Panthers dominated the 3-game kind of series between the Rangers. 2-1 Panthers. Their 2 wins were in regulation. The Rangers' 1 win was in a shootout. So I'm pretty terrified about this series, but we shall see. The Panthers have studs at every single damn position. Kachuk, Reinhart, Barkov, Verhaeghe, Ekblad on defense, Forsling on defense. They are studs. Now, do the Rangers just have that magic? They've kind of had some magic. Can they keep it up? We shall see.
Totally.
All right, lastly, let's talk about Harrison Butker, please.
Oh, boy.
So, we didn't get to this last week, in part because I'm like, why do I care what the Kansas City kicker has to say? I mean, like, I don't care. You're not even really a football player, all right, bro? I mean, and apparently Patrick Mahomes doesn't like him, which just solidifies my Patrick Mahomes is the true GOAT conversation. That's just an aside. I just like Mahomes. I can't help it. And Butker, I guess, just gave a commencement speech at this Catholic small, college. And it was totally psychotic, where basically he was saying women need to be in the kitchen, they need to know their place, all this stuff, all this extreme far-right stuff, to the point where the NFL had to issue a statement saying they condemned the comments. This is an excerpt from Harrison Butker's speech, and it's unfortunate because he actually is one of the best kickers in the NFL. But he's clearly a horrible human being.
It is only in the past few years that I have grown encouraged to speak more boldly and directly, because as I mentioned earlier, I have leaned into my vocation as a husband and father, and as a man. To the gentleman here today, part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. As men, we set the tone of the culture, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. This absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the U.S., and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well. Be unapologetic in your masculinity, fighting against the cultural emasculation of men. Do hard things. Never settle for what is easy. You might have a talent that you don't necessarily enjoy, but if it glorifies God, maybe you should lean into that over something that you might think suits you better. I speak from experience as an introvert who now finds myself as an amateur public speaker and an entrepreneur, something I never thought I'd be when I received my industrial engineering degree. The road ahead is bright. Things are changing, society is shifting, and people, young and old, are embracing tradition. Not only has it been my vocation that has helped me and those closest to me, but not surprising to many of you, should be my outspoken embrace of the traditional Latin Mass. I've been very vocal in my love and devotion to the TLM and its necessity for our lives. But what I think gets misunderstood is that people who attend the TLM do so out of pride or preference.
Cult.
I can speak to my own experience, but for most people I have come across within these communities, this simply is not true. I do not attend the TLM because I think I am better than others, or for the smells and bells, or even for the love of Latin. I attend the TLM because I believe, just as the God of the Old Testament was pretty particular in how he wanted to be worshiped, the same holds true for us today. It is through the TLM that I encountered order and began to pursue it in my own life.
Okay, so that was just one part of the psychosis here. Bradley, this is the part where he speaks about women. We'll get to the TLM in a second, because there's some really important things people need to know about the TLM. Definitely not a cult. Definitely not anything far right that you need to be worried about. Don't worry about it. Don't look away. I mean, look away. This was when he spoke about women. Oh, hold on. One sec.
As men, we set the tone of the culture.
Oh my God.
That is a lady.
You've just gotta just mute everything. Yeah. Bradley accidentally opened it twice, so apologies, guys. Let's start this over. This is him talking about women, and you know who I look to for advice on my femininity is this freak.
Congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you.
Oh my gosh.
How many of you are sitting here now
this?
about to cross this stage and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother.
Put this,
I'm on this stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would
Is my
convert to the
chattel.
faith, become my wife,
Oh, my
and embrace
wife.
one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
Oh, homemaker! All right, so I was looking for, and my bad, Bradley, for sending that to you late. I was looking for that that unedited clip, but honestly, that was a beautiful addition, I will say, by whoever put that together.
Yeah, this wasn't a Jerry Seinfeld graduation where there was the Bitcoin graduation where there was a PowerPoint assigned. This was the Handmaid's Tale B-roll was not playing during Harrison Butker's speech.
You know, you really can just see how when he gets choked up like that, I'm sure he loves his wife in his own way, but as someone who is subservient to him, as somebody who is essentially his chattel, who is going to raise his children, who is going to be under his control as a homemaker. So he also talked about abortion in this speech, just went absolutely insane. Talked about the murder of innocent babies, criticized abortion, IVF, and surrogacy throughout this speech. He then talked about how LGBTQ people are sinful, even though I saw some very unverified rumors on TikTok that perhaps he may have taken part in some sort of LGBT or maybe just relationship at a certain point. I did.
Allegedly.
Very unverified. He basically said that women should be homemakers and all this kind of stuff. Now, as you heard him speak there, you heard the term TLM over and over again. Now, when you look up TLM, aka Traditional Latin Mass, most of the articles that you're going to get are right-wing articles about this. Because I really am struggling to find more information on TLM, in part because it's a lot of outrage articles from like the National Review and other Catholic publications about the fact that the FBI was looking into this group at one point as a hate group. And I'd heard Republicans talk about that at a certain time, but I wasn't exactly sure what they were referring to. But here's an article from the New Yorker I'll read from that explains it quite well. The traditional Latin Mass, a long source of sustenance for Catholics leery of the reforms of Vatican II, is now a focal point for Catholics who disdain Pope Francis. The death in December, and this is again an older article, of Benedict XVI, the Pope Emeritus, left Catholic traditionalists without a champion in Rome. Benedict's views on the Mass were complex, but his preference for the Baroque vestments, red slippers, and a gold-threaded cope had made him a figurehead for old-school Catholicism. His long efforts to close a breach between the Vatican and the Society, blah, blah, blah. It emboldened his traditionalism, basically, Benedict, emboldened the TLM movement. And a directive he issued in 2007 had quickened the movement's spread. Then in early February, the publication of a leaked report from an FBI branch office declaring the Latin Mass enclaves in Virginia that they were harboring anti-Semites and members of the, quote, far-right white nationalist movement led traditionalists to claim that a religion-averse deep state was targeting them, and the Bureau's retraction of the report soon afterward. It did not meet the exacting standards of the FBI, the Bureau said in the statement, only sharpened their sense of themselves as a persecuted minority. Now, the FBI basically targets every mosque in this country. Do you think that they would ever issue a statement apologizing for doing so, Bradley? I'm still waiting on that on that.
No, because I think with the way that the phrase of radical Islamic terrorism, as well as I think every sort of phraseology and verbiage since like 2000, since the Patriot Act, has
been about Muslims.
Has introduced enough plausible deniability to basically investigate any Muslim person for literally doing anything under those auspices. And those
mosques are not necessarily harboring far right white nationalists as being as the FBI initially alleged here, but then they walked it back. It's like, who do we serve here, really? Latin Mass adherents are a tiny minority of practicing Catholics, and most church traditionalists, bishops, priests, and lay people alike are content to take part in Masses offered in the language they speak in everyday life. But the TLM conflict has been a stand-in for other conflicts over the decline of Catholics' participation in Mass, and the quality of liturgy, over the outward-facing progressive orientation of Francis's pontificate, and over Vatican II itself, which traditionalists see not as a thoroughgoing reform, but as something between a modest course correction and a betrayal of the church's patrimony. Basically, because there have been some more progressive reforms under Pope Francis, he is, as some people think, just basically the Antichrist who is hiding in as a wolf in sheep's clothing as the Pope. The TLM movement's association with anti-Semitism is not completely a figment of the FBI field officer's imagination. Shortly after Pope Benedict welcomed the Schismatic Society of St. Pius X back into the Catholic fold in January 2009, an interview from a few days earlier surfaced in which its leader, Bishop Richard Williamson, denied the reality of the Holocaust. "I believe there were no gas chambers," he said. The Vatican suspended him from priestly duties, and he was later ousted from the society. But you hear just these rumblings here. It's definitely not a right-wing organization, definitely not a cult. Well, at the very least, this is... Let's pull up this this TikTok here. Or no, first, let's pull up this this link, this tweet. So Butker, as a part of the TLM, founded this company called MD Keller with Catholic influencer Austin Wright, whose board of directors includes Leonard Leo, the infamous right-wing funder of Supreme Court justices such as Clarence Thomas and others.
So he had Austin Wright had a fellowship at the Leonine Forum where Leo is on the board of directors.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
But this man is a Leonard Leo associate that Butker is in, business with, supposedly. Apologies. Thank you for correcting me on that. So those ties sound kind of loose. I get it, right? But this TikTok that I saw was quite informative. And again, her explainer, I can't vouch for everything in this, but based on what I've read, this seems to be on the up and up. This is from TikTok user at Stella Mags. I think this has been recirculated around blue Twitter at this point, giving her explanation of the TLM movement.
Catholics. He's not like a New York Catholic or what your nonna and nonna were or what your abuela and abuelo are. He's a part of the traditional Latin Mass movement. And that group is currently at war with the Pope. They've been at war for some time. And Harrison Butker's speech was no accident. He purposely used triggering right-wing political talk to gain this national attention. They want him to be the face of the TLM movement to recruit younger people into their church. Now, a memo from the FBI was leaked back in February, and I'm not going to read this part aloud. But basically it said this. Pause to read. And there's something that I found out after I posted the original video, so I'm going to add it here about this FBI memo. The FBI eventually redacted this information, but not because it was a lie, because there was pressure from people in Congress claiming that it was an attack on religious freedom. And the head of the FBI, who was appointed by Donald Trump, kind of took the heat for it and just let it get swept under the rug. But who was one of the Congress people that led that charge? None other than Josh Hawley.
Whoa.
Harrison Butker's new BFF. I think you all know where this is going, right? I don't have to say it. So make no mistake, Harrison Butker is no Catholic. And he's not some innocent man who just wants, traditional values. These are Christo-fascists. And in some way, they're worse and more dangerous than the evangelicals because they have better branding. I cannot stress how dangerous all of this is. Religion, especially far-right extremist religions, have no place in our government. Our founding fathers were very clear about that for a reason. And this intermingling of things is done by design. And if you think the United States is above becoming, one of those countries, you are extremely naive. History is very long. America.
All right. Well, the end part, I don't know if we're on pace to becoming a Christo-fascist nation, based on like the way the majority of Americans feel. But if Donald Trump gets elected, we are going to be in very big trouble on that front, I would say. So, yeah, I mean, Bradley, your thoughts?
Well, I was saying this a little bit in the chat, but I think it's kind of amazing how, how quickly "shut up and dribble" leaves the,
Yes.
conservative lexicon once guys like Harrison Butker start saying shit like this in public, and start getting criticized for it in public, and how. And how right leaning media organizations and conservative media organizations and politicians are very quick to tie themselves and hug very closely their celebrity allies.
Mm-hmm.
But when Democrats do that or liberals do that, they are either a bloodthirsty cabal of satanic pedophiles who are locking arms with George Soros and Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein, or they are discredited as idiots because they work in they are figures on they're pop culture figures. So I think it's just interesting how celebrity is weaponized one way, and it's not, and it's one of the many permission structures in right wing thought that only our side is allowed to do things in a certain way and nobody else is, and it's just this very much so is in hock in so many ways to the culture of impunity in the conservative movement, that we are allowed to do literally anything we want, and it's unacceptable for you to do it. But when a Kansas City Chiefs kicker for some reason delivers a commencement speech at a small college, and gets an enormous amount of media attention on both ends for doing so, he becomes one of our crusaders.
Yeah, and it is interesting too because, I mean, how old is Harrison Butker? Kickers can play a long time, but he's kind of hit the pinnacle of his career. He's 28.
He's 28.
Okay, so I mean, I think maybe, who knows, he might have just basically said, if I get canceled for this launches my new career into basically being a right-wing influencer.
Exactly.
Or if I get kicked off the team for this. And that's not the case. He's still employed. I don't think Kansas City would get rid of him because he has these extreme far-right political views. But you also, of course, see that in contrast to Colin Kaepernick, who...
remind me, did Colin Kaepernick or Eric Reed ever play another snap in the NFL after what they did?
Nope. And that is the way that the cookie crumbles. All right, guys. I'm losing my voice a little bit here, if you can hear. I'm going to wrap up. I'll read some IMs really quickly. Maya Balsditch says, not a loose tie. Leonard Leo was the commencement speaker at Benedictine College last year. So there you go. Snarkanorski said, I assume Bradley enjoyed the Defector article and comments roasting the fun couple of Butker and Hawley. Did you end up seeing that?
I'm not sure if I saw. I got to check that out. I saw that they wrote something about Butker, which I'm definitely going to check out because they usually do a great job of skewering guys like this.
Dan from Columbus said, personally, I would have loved to go to TLM as a kid. That's when my parents could, when my parents got mad at me for not paying attention in math, I could have just said that you can't understand this shit either. Way better excuse than I'm just resting my eyes. Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, my best friend growing up was Catholic, and I'd sometimes, we'd have a sleepover on Saturday, and I'd go to church with her family on Sunday, and I was like, thank God my family is not like this. Holy crap, this is so boring. J-Man J's, that kicker is a total moron. Anyways, my uncle passed last week, and it sucks. We used to talk baseball, and I thought at least my father passed... After my father passed last year, he was still alive. Anyway, solidarity to anyone struggling. I'm so sorry to hear that, J-Man Jays. I really am. That's really tough. And the final IM of the day. Let's find it here. Floyd the Barber. The Knicks almost made the conference finals after floundering for 25 years. It was a great season for them. They'll probably be back. You can't say the same for the Pacers, Wolves, or Mavs. There's a good chance they'll get bounced in the first round or even completely miss out next year. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, the Knicks have a lot of people to re-sign.
True.
I mean, Hartenstein's is about to get paid. OG Anunoby, who knows what he wants to do with his contract. And also, Jalen Brunson is eligible for like a big pay raise as well. So we will have to see. Appreciate you all. Thanks so much. We will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.